All right, it's happy hour. Welcome to the third installment of the happy hour chat. This is a conversation I've been wanting to have for quite a while now. I'm with Graham Polakoff. He's the owner and operator of Omnikinetics, which is a performance-based training facility in Birmingham, Michigan. He's a level 3 TPI trainer, golf enthusiast. He's also an athletic trainer. I would say most of your clients are golfers at this point, right?
No doubt, no doubt.
You've worked a lot with track and field athletes, Olympians, junior tennis players. You kind of been around the gamut, kind of like myself. But before we start, let's find out what you're drinking here. What do you got?
Got a Bell's out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, local brew.
Representing.
Awesome.
Beautiful. I got a Winter Chills Ale. This is out of Delaware at a place called Fordham and Dominion Brewing Company. It's quite good. I figure
Nice.
it's still, is it spring yet? Are we in spring?
That's why I'm drinking Oberon. I think we're in spring, but it's like 42 and rainy here. So
yeah,
anything to help me pretend it's spring.
So you're
they closed the golf courses on us the other day. So
oh man, yeah, I know. Same down here. My dad actually wrote a letter to the mayor complaining.
That's great.
So I don't know. It's probably not going to go anywhere, but whatever.
Yeah.
So you guys are self-isolating, I'm assuming?
Trying. I'm still going into headquarters every morning. I'm pretty much keeping a routine.
All right, you're not training though.
So I have a few folks that come through our doors.
Yeah.
Because we are a rehab facility as well. We've got a Medicare number. We've got our contracts with some of the insurance companies. Even though everybody that is coming through the doors right now, they're basically just cash-based rehab.
Right.
But every single one of them is dealing with something kind of on and off. Some sciatica guy that I saw this afternoon. Again, it was one-on-one in a 5,000 square foot facility, not ideal. But he was dealing with some impingement. He saw the chiropractor last week. So we just kind of tend to run our rehab and fitness. There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, it's tough right now too, because a lot of people are experiencing pain that are orthopedic related type pain, and they need an outlet. They need help with that. No one wants to sit with sciatica for weeks and months because they can't get help from a doctor right now. So
no doubt.
Kudos to you guys for helping people out. So we kind of have this conversation, I think, back and forth about really what golf fitness is and what for golf, like what it's supposed to be. What does it look like? And I think you can go to Instagram, social media, and you'll see a myriad of exercises. And so, well, why is that golf specific? You know what I mean? So I guess how do you program exercises for your golfers? I mean, where are you thinking? Where are you coming from?
So with regards to, whether it's golf fitness or baseball or you name it, for quite a while, I've been in that camp where sports performance is sports performance regardless of what sport you're training for. There's obviously some specific aspects to golf and tennis and, baseball with regards to kind of where the arm slot is, but they're all throwing athletes. I even think about soccer as they're throwing athletes. They're just throwing their foot.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal is always to get people moving better, feeling good, adding in whatever implements or exercises and things into their program that might be specific to their sport. Maybe it's more of a power sport. And so we need to program those types of things where it's more strength. But I've not thought about, this is like golf specific exercise. There's no reason. And it happens all the time where I might have the same exercise that I'm doing with a swimmer, that I'm doing with a golfer, because the movement pattern is the same that I'm trying to correct.
Yeah, and I think I kind of say this to some of my clients too when they come in. It's like these exercises aren't golf-ish exercise. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like you're swinging or pulling on a band in a golf particular fashion.
Oh yeah,
it look like a golf swing. That's not really what golf fitness is. Basically, we're trying to attack your weaknesses, your deficiencies, and improve whatever we find for the evaluation, the range of motion, stability, strength. And the way I kind of like to incorporate the golf aspect of it is to implement sort of golf-specific movement patterns that are related to what they're trying to do with their golf swing. So like we may do 2 exercises back to back, a push and a pull, and then that third exercise is going to be a movement pattern related exercise. But I think so many times people sort of just kind of get confused with what it is. Should I be pulling on this cable with my lead arm just like that? I mean, it's that golf specific, right? I mean, it's not really, because that doesn't quite follow the way the club was swung in an efficient manner, right? Through the kinematic
Absolutely.
sequence.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, issues, you've got parents or coaches, whoever it is, that come through and they're like, is this tennis specific? Is this golf specific?
Right.
And they expect the exercise to look like the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I firmly believe that skill is earned out on that playing field as a kid, as you develop. And then obviously as you get older and you're mature, when your body's able to accomplish those tasks, things come along with it and you get better. And you and I, we can make them stronger. We can make them more mobile. We can, again, like you said, take care of their deficiencies, but it's not going to necessarily look like tennis all the time or look like golf. Sometimes it does, but most of the time they're an exercise working on those patterns. And if they want to get good, hopefully they've got some innate skill. That always helps. And then hopefully they want to practice their butt off like a world-class, athlete.
What's your number one priority for golfers from a training perspective? Huh?
Sorry, I got a dog in the way.
Oh,
right
that's
now.
all right.
Say that question one more time.
Yeah. So what do you prioritize as the most important aspect of your training program for golfers? In other words, are you looking at injury prevention for your clients? Because obviously golf can take a toll on low backs.
No doubt.
Are you looking more from performance related? Or are you looking at club head speed? I mean, when you're writing a program, what is your thought process?
Sure. With regards to my background as an athletic trainer and being in the rehab setting for the first half of my career, pretty much solely in the rehab setting and injury prevention setting, more rehab than anything though. I've always looked at that as kind of my foundation. Like my goal is to keep these people safe.
Yeah.
Right. Injury free. My exercise, the programming needs to be as smart as possible. Looking at everything from a risk reward scenario. If there's any, everything has some inherent risk in it, but the less risk, the better. And if there's an easy trade-off and I can accomplish the same goals, I really go as safe as I can. Because these people don't want to they might have some aesthetic goals. They want to look good, but the clients walking through our doors, and especially my doors, they want to play golf. They want to play it a lot, and they want to play it at a high level. And if an exercise is going to compromise that, I feel like I've missed the boat on what their desires are.
Right. So when you get a new client that comes in through the doors, what's your assessment process?
So it's a few things. I usually try to involve multiple sets of eyes. So I'll go through a screen, which is kind of a combination of the TPI golf screen, the FMS, maybe FSMA, and then there's another screen that a good friend of mine, who's one of my biggest mentors, he is a physical therapist, pitching coach with the NPA, just a brilliant mind, kind of thinks out of the box. And he's taken, he's been inspired by all the screening process, whether it's Gray Cook, TPI, Gary Gray, and he's over the years has honed and kind of developed his own screen. And so I utilize that quite a bit as well. And then anytime I have the opportunity to bring the chiropractor in, who is very functional in his outlook, he's not the traditional chiropractor. I want him to take a look at things. If anybody's dealing with aches and pains, which 95% of the people are, I can probably count on one hand how many people in the last 5 years have come through without something. I
think, that's true. And with all these continuing education seminars that we end up going to, the big theme is if they're in pain, if they're hurt, refer out. But that's not always possible because, like you said, almost everyone coming in with some sort of pain.
Sure.
And what we advertise is that exercise is helpful, not just for performance, but for feeling better, for rehabbing, that sort of thing. So, are there, do you take on clients that are hurt or that are coming with an injury? You do.
Many of the folks that have come through our doors, they're coming through because they're hurt, because my background is in rehab, because I've got a physical therapist that I can bring in and help evaluate, because there's a chiropractor on site. Many folks are coming through our doors because they're injured. And we've kind of built a reputation for fixing people that others couldn't. It's not uncommon when you hear folks that have been over at other fitness facilities, other PT clinics, they came in with a shoulder issue and all they did was spend time on that shoulder. And mean, you start to look at the whole system and you realize they have an ankle issue that moves like crap. They can't balance, and they're they're using that injured limb to do too much work. So ideally, you take that out of the equation, you fix the problem, and you allow that shoulder to heal itself, because it will if you let it.
Sure.
And so we're pretty lucky, but that's where I really spent the last, I guess, 10 years, is kind of becoming that guy that folks just weren't getting healthy other places, and they wound up coming to us. And we've, because it's a collaborative system, I have no pride when it's all about that client, and I've never lost a single client by bringing in another set of eyes to help out. They've only appreciated that.
Yeah, I think to have the humility to recognize.
Oh yeah,
we might not know enough.
I just assume that I don't know enough unless I'm sitting in a classroom of like 5th graders trying to teach them some stuff. Like, it's amazing how many times, and every person that comes in, can have different, a different reason behind the same injury, right? They're all how many people are dealing with back issues, but it's amazing when you really start peeling that onion away, how many different ways the body will cheat. And their back was just getting screwed in the deal. So if you assume it's a back issue, this is how I go about it. If I assume that the pain that they come in with is their problem, I feel like I'm already behind the 8 ball. Sure. So I appreciate it. I toss it aside, and then I start looking everywhere for something. And I will dig so hard into their old injuries. So many people want to just, throw away their old ankle injury from when they were 15, or their knee injury when they were 20, and they're 60 years old now, and they just, even the injuries from 3 years ago, they just don't think that it's a part of the equation, and it always is.
Right. And it's like, if someone's low back is hurting, basically you want to check the areas above and below that area, right?
No doubt.
In my experience with working with clients over the last 15 years or so, it's like anyone who's ever come in with a back problem, it's not because the back was too stable. You know what I mean?
Right.
At some point there was excessive motion in the lumbar vertebrae, typically if it's a low back problem, whether it's too much extension, too much rotation, even too much flexion, that's typically caused by other areas that aren't doing their part. And that's where you got to look above and below.
Yep.
And I think it's so undervalued, telling people just to rest, like leave it alone. You don't need to start stretching a back that hurts. It might give you some kind of temporary relief quickly, but it's not going to last, and you might actually be doing a little bit more harm. And that's why I think the assessment process, like you were explaining, is so important, to kind of give people that guidance as to, all right, just don't do anything here. Let it rest, let it heal, because that's what the body does well. We don't need to start throwing a million exercises at it. But let's work on maybe some hip stuff, leaving the back alone, right? And then maybe trying to strengthen the glutes or something like that, again, to keep the back out of it. So, it's like with fitness and everything, you're always trying to do some detective work and find out, because it does come on our shoulders, where we do need to start working with people that are hurt and trying to come up with solutions that they can keep exercising while taking the time to rest.
For sure. People having to give up exercise because they're injured drives me crazy. And that's where we've really been able to, again, create a very different culture at Omnikinetics. Just like these guys that I saw, there were 3 different people that came through today. One guy has dealt with some sciatica. There's another guy that has had some on and off shoulder issues, and we went through 4 or 5 months where he was great, and then literally last week came down with something. He saw the chiropractor. He's feeling pretty good, but there's no reason that he can't walk out of there actually getting a workout with his correctives in place. Right. And now he feels good about coming in. He's already stressed as heck because of what work is like right now. Sure. He's not able to leave the house. So for me to offer an opportunity where he comes in for an hour, his shoulders feel better when he leaves. We've got some correctives on board, and he got a sweat going. There's just no reason that you can't do it if it's done right.
Yeah. Let's go to what everyone likes to talk about. Obviously, one of the big reasons people come to see you or me is like they want more distance. They want to start hitting the ball further. There's a lot of reasons why I think people maybe don't hit the ball as far as they think they should. And sometimes the truth is painful to hear. But I think by and large, people that come into the gym, especially if they've never trained before, should be able to get some distance improvement within a couple of weeks to a couple months.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I've noticed you guys have kind of switched gears a little bit with your power approach, utilizing the Mach 3 training method,
Yeah, we've
which is
used some of
developed by
that.
Mike Romatowski. And I'll let you describe a little bit about what you guys are doing with that.
They Mike and Jeff came through the Detroit area. I want to say it was November, and a couple of my good friends who are just awesome golf coaches, they hosted them. We went through there, and actually there must have been 8 or 10 of my clients that wanted to go through it. They were all excited, and one of the guys was incredibly generous. He's like, just buy the equipment. So he bought it all, and we've been basically bringing everybody through the system that we learned for that
Right.
seminar.
So for the people that don't know, describe the equipment.
Well, amazingly enough, it's basically PVC pipe,
Right.
some hockey tape or baseball tape. They've done a great job of making PVC pipe and hockey tape look good. There's some different thicknesses of rope and flex to that PVC pipe to give you a sense of not necessarily a sense of lag, but just a feeling of the end of that club, so you can hear it and
Right.
feel it. And then their whole concept is this speed out in front, right? Just basically the task itself of trying to swing that club fast in front of you versus down at the ball has done some amazing things at creating club head speed. Sometimes just the task itself changes how the outcome is.
Right, I know. And they have a lot of different pieces of equipment, the jet stick, the Velociraptor. Again, it's kind of weird to look at, right? But I've explained to my clients, it's what I like about it is, especially with the rope one, the Velociraptor, is that without telling them, it sort of gives them the feeling of proper sequencing, getting the hips to start to initiate them and cracking that whip, so to speak. And you guys have done some work with, or I don't know, some kind of in-house studies, but you've got some immediate increase in club head speed, right? You test all the time.
There's no doubt. Now, because of where we're at, we don't have any balls in front of them when they're testing. They're just swinging that driver, but their speeds were going way up. I mean, we had guys that started at 120 that were swinging at 135.
Yeah.
Very talented golfers. So whether he's swinging that driver at 135 when he gets to the course, probably not, but there's no doubt that he gains speed from that. And everybody's been gaining speed. But to go along with that, we don't have the ball at our facility, but I do have several clients that work with the 2 golf pros that I mentioned before, Ben and Chad, at their facility, and they've got TrackMans and they've got all the technology. And this guy has seen his club head speed go up dramatically.
That's awesome. What other power and speed exercises you guys do? Have you abandoned med ball throws? You still do those?
No, I love med ball work. Whether it's some of the smaller, more elastic, bouncy ones from Perform Better, do some of that work in half kneeling or standing slams, working on balance and shoulder hip separation. Some of the stuff that I really like, you get a really light wall ball and do some different work there. You can really get some explosive power, almost kind of like some Happy Gilmore style throws, or loading up in a golf stance and rocking that ball with some rotation. Power is obviously a big component of the game, so we make sure we train it for sure.
And lower body stuff, you do a lot of like explosive plyometrics, jumps, stuff like that, or is that something?
I can't say we do tons of that. I've got a handful of clients that are comfortable doing it, and like I said, if I go back to my risk reward, I have a lot of golfers that are 45, 50 and up, and box jumps and plyos just that gets too far to the risk reward for me. So we'll use the med ball work for most of that.
Yeah, we actually, it's like over 40. I think about a year ago, I said to my staff, I said, over 40, no more jumps. We might do some box jumps because the landing obviously is a little lighter to the joints. But it's just, again, people falling, hurt. Any injury I've really ever had training someone has come through plyometric type work or jumps, where the body is not necessarily conditioned to land properly.
Right.
You know what I mean? It doesn't have the tissue tolerance for it. So an injury pops up, and then it's like, okay, I violated rule number 1. Don't hurt the body. And then I don't sleep for like 3
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite power exercises, I call them power pull-ups. So along the same lines as a box jump, right? So you're obviously jumping onto that box. It's a nice, easy landing.
Mhm.
One of my favorite exercises is you get a bar that you can barely get to, right? So now that task isn't getting on the box, it's really getting up. And
Right.
in my opinion, I mean, you want to get someone to jump high, you've got to go, not jump on top of something, but you've got to reach for something that incorporates the upper body into it a little bit more.
Mhm.
And so what we'll do is instead of just even regular pull-ups, they jump up, they get to a bar that they can barely get to, and then using all their momentum, they use their legs, pull themselves up almost like if they were running from a lion, right? Trying to get in that tree. And so now, you know, if you're looking at the full body aspect of it, I think it's just a really safe way to do a pull-up.
Right.
You know, because now your hip flexors are involved and your abs are involved, and you get that power component. So you get the explosiveness that you need.
Right.
You get to add in that explosive pull power, and then they get to lower themselves down, nice, controlled in that eccentric manner. So they get a nice soft landing, but they get all the advantages of the power and a pull-up.
And you got to make sure you have the right height, I guess, for the chin up.
Yes.
Reach,
Yeah. No.
right?
If you don't have some high bars, it doesn't really work. But fortunately,
Right.
we've got some pretty decent bars in
You
in
got a
our
pretty
gym.
open gym. You said 5,000 square feet.
Yeah,
What's your gym like?
including locker rooms, a couple treatment rooms.
Awesome.
So
That's
plenty
really
of
cool.
space. Too much space right now, though.
Let's get to the topic of kettlebell swings. Tell me a little bit about, you include those a lot for your golfers.
I love it.
Why?
I love it. So I look at the kettlebell swing no different than a deadlift, hex bar deadlift in the sense that it's a hip hinge.
Mhm.
It's obviously an incredibly athletic pattern. I think the hip hinge is the ultimate pattern for athleticism. If you're playing second base, you're playing defense in basketball, you're wrestling, golf. And so I train the heck out of it. It doesn't bother me with regards, especially the kettlebell swing itself. It doesn't bother me with regards to maybe increasing early extension, which is obviously one of the biggest issues in amateur golfers,
Right.
is that early extension. And if we go back to what we were talking about with regards to exercises being golf specific,
Yeah.
I think the pattern is obviously incredibly essential for athleticism in golf. But I think that upward vertical thrust, we obviously know is critical in the speed and power of these golfers. Right? You look at the long drive guys; they're jumping off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at a young kid who's golfing, 7, 8, 9 years old, they don't have that good rotary component yet. Their biggest source of power is vertical thrust.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, why don't we train the heck out of it? I think that rotational component comes with as someone gets older and just earns that developmental movement. And then it's just a part of the skill of the game. And if they're going to practice and they're going to play, they're going to earn that rotation along with that vertical thrust. So I think that training, it's just has been critical.
Yeah, I like that take on trying to train that vertical component. Have you ever had any experience working with Swing Catalyst, which is effectively a force plate system, which in my experience kind of gives information regarding lateral drive, how much lateral force you create, essentially rotational speed, and then vertical thrust, how much force you can push through the ground.
Right.
And my mind, I'm thinking this could be actually really valuable to know from a training perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
First of all, what is the athlete doing with regards to sequencing of that? But then second of all, where are they deficient, so we can get a little bit more specific with the exercise selection. Now I thought you might find this interesting, and I know TPI talks about vertical thrust as being very important. Obviously you can see it in the long drive guys, like you said, they can jump. Yeah. But we did some testing with vertical jump and the Swing Catalyst, very minimal, I should say. But we had one student kind of score off the charts at the vertical thrust component in the golf swing using the Swing Catalyst. It's actually how he swung the club. But his vertical jump was like 21 inches, which is nothing to write home about. I would say that's in that average area according to TPI. But the way he sequenced that wasn't great. In other words, his vertical thrust was coming too soon in his swing. So, it's like sometimes the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, kind of. So it'd be interesting to see if anyone's done it, I'd love to hear about it, but done some real research relating the two. How accurate or how specific is vertical jump training and ground force how is that being applied to vertical thrust and swing? Are you improving that?
Sure. Yeah, no, we've not had access to the swing catalyst. I know it's a great tool out there.
Yeah.
I thought that being able to use some of those force plates, swing catalyst, and gosh, what's the other one that's paired up with V1 recently?
I know. I saw it.
The other pressure mat.
Yeah, there's a couple actually.
But I would have loved to actually had access to that, in doing kettlebell swings or doing deadlifts and doing squats, just to see what that pressure is like and being able to analyze, how symmetrical folks are using it, how much pressure they're using.
Well, what do you think about that? And that kind of leads me into my next question. Squatting and deadlifting for golfers. Stu McGill, people who are in the fitness world and the rehab world know who Stu McGill is. He talks a lot about deadlifting and squatting, and has measured a lot of the biomechanics involved with those type of things and pressures on the spine. And he has found that obviously there's high tension and pressure through the spine itself when you are deadlifting with heavy weight. He does not think it's a particularly great thing to do with golfers because he looks at the back as something that should be mobile to some degree. You need mobility through there.
Sure.
You don't want to create super stiffness throughout. And let's face it, when you're doing a deadlift, you need to train that stiffness. You want that stiffness because that's what's going to protect your spine. But if you do that a lot over and over and over again, are you going to create this inherent stiffness now that all of a sudden is going to start restricting maybe separation, which is obviously a great way to create speed. Decreasing flexibility, maybe in your thoracic spine because you're constantly locking in your lats.
Sure.
So, I'm kind of curious how you approach that. Is that something that you do with your clients?
I mean, I can't say that at this point I've been concerned that that deadlifting, and we don't do too much symmetrical deadlifting. We're probably at least 75-80% single leg deadlift.
Yeah.
I just think it's a safer option. I like the single leg variations again to identify symmetry, but the thought that it's gonna again lock these people up and prevent some of the rotational components, I've not felt like I've seen it at all.
Yeah.
Squatting itself, we don't do any back squats. Mainly front rack, mainly with kettlebell, and I tend to do a lot more deadlifting than squatting. I like to use the squat as restoring that movement pattern more than training the hell out of it and getting them crazy strong at it. I'd rather have them crazy strong at the deadlift than crazy strong at their squat.
Are you deadlifting from the floor with a barbell or using trap bar? How do you?
No, it's trap bar if we're going symmetrical. Sometimes we'll do some suitcase deadlift with kettlebells. But I like that high handle. I don't feel like anybody, unless they need to be good at pulling that barbell from the ground, I just don't feel like, again, going back to that risk reward, it's a skill and it's an implement that's just got a lot more risk to it. And none of my guys walking through the door need to be amazing at pulling a straight bar off the ground.
Right.
So if they can't easily get to that hex bar, I'm sliding weights underneath it and bringing it up to them. We've got some really heavy kettlebells in our gym. We've got some of the 150s and 176, and I don't have any issues putting a few sandbags underneath it. And this past winter, we had a gentleman who's retired. He's 65 years old, pulling the 176-pound kettlebell from a few sandbags. We started at 60s and 70s, and he worked his way up all winter, and he got strong. But we brought that handle way up high to him, so he could still develop the strength and power, the scapular stability, the postural components that a heavy deadlift can provide. And I think they're pretty valuable from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I think I kind of agree with you. I'm always weighing the two back and forth because with the deadlift, you surely are training a great isometric contraction of basically the whole body, particularly the upper half of the body, backside of the body, posterior chain, spinal erectors. And I think that does have some value if you're looking, because when we're talking about core training, let's say, I think so many of us implement our core training through either anti-extension or anti-rotation or anti-side bending. That's something that was popularized by Mike Boyle, which essentially is you're trying to resist motion, not create motion. And what a trap bar deadlift does in some way is it's creating and resisting motion. You're resisting lumbar flexion. You're resisting thoracic spine flexion. So you're getting that isometric component to it. You're also getting some postural work through it. So, you know, as with everything, obviously it depends on the client. You know, what their injury history is, stuff like that. It also depends on what they like to do, what they're good at, if they've had a history of doing it. At least those are all the things that I sort of factor in. But I feel like I'm always in the gray area. I'm always like, well, it's good over here, but I don't know about that. So I'm always back and forth, you know, I'm having this fight in my mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I think every, you know, just like that assessment, when that client comes in, the reason they might be dealing with that pain is different. And every exercise just you have to be able to scale it appropriately. I think one of the biggest issues with, whether it's physical therapy or fitness trainers, when their thought of scaling an exercise is just changing the weight up or down.
Yeah.
Like my scale is each exercise I'm trying to improve that movement pattern. And I might have 5 different ways and they all look totally different to help develop that hip hinge. Right. Or help develop that overhead extension with the thoracic spine. And so if we can scale, if we know, first of all, what that person needs, and then we can scale their exercises appropriately, they're going to be happy, right? All they want to do is feel good so they can go play good golf.
Right. And that's really effectively it, I think, at the end of the day. You once said to me, I guess pretty recently actually, that you guys don't do any, I would say, real, what people might think of as flexibility training or mobility training. That's not necessarily a part of your, let's say, curriculum. Why?
I've just always felt like
that was blunt. Sorry. Why? Why don't you do more?
Flexibility? We introduced it a lot in a dynamic component at the beginning. I think certain exercises involve, you know, a flexibility or mobility component to it. I think so many of us are tight, not because things are stiff, but we've lost stability somewhere. We've lost postural control. And so now, if we don't account for that, it won't matter how flexible you are or how mobile you are. Like, I mean, there's obviously there's this gray area, right, of mobility and stability playing off of each other. And I've just seen too many people in the last 10 years where they're tight back, that they wanted to stretch their hamstrings, they wanted to stretch their low back, they wanted to strengthen their low back, or their abs was a shoulder issue. And they had an old shoulder injury, and we rehabbed their shoulder and their tight back went away. So I've just seen it too many times where flexibility was just not the solution. And the quicker I went away and started looking for the stability problem or the motor control problem, their tightness, you know, went away too.
So what does your warm-up look like? You guys do, I guess, mobility would be considered, you know, like you said, the kind of a dynamic warm-up to some degree, but are they ever on the floor? Are they doing floor-specific mobility work?
Sure. Yeah, no, there's like some of the stuff on the floor that they might do after they typical warm-up. They'll come in, they'll jump on some piece of cardio for, you know, 2-3 minutes, just kind of get sweating, get moving. We might throw some inchworms or Spider-Man stretches in there. They might do some hamstring kickdowns. A lot of times I like to throw a kettlebell in there so they've got some, again, added stability and postural component to it. So they're doing some hamstring kickdowns, maybe some arm bars with the kettlebell. Again, that shoulder stability combined with some shoulder hip separation. Other things on the ground. I have an exercise that I call a Z-sit. So basically, if you're sitting on the ground, kind of pull your legs and knees up towards you. You pull them in as close as you can while maintaining a head over hips position. And then they're just reaching in the air, trying to create this elongation, this expansion. So there's a lot of postural components in it. A ton of abs and core that they feel is, again, their core exercise. But again, I'm looking at it from a postural stability standpoint. And it's amazing, an exercise like that, you add that expansion and that postural component into it, and all of a sudden It helps with their shin splints. It helps with their knee pain because they've got better control up top. So again, if we add that stability in there, all of a sudden their tightness tends to just kind of go away.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess that gets back to the assessment too, to kind of figure out where they're stiff, but then to come up with some exercises or routes or plans of action that don't necessarily include nailing that area right away.
Sure.
So in other words, a stability answer to mobility problem.
Correct. Yeah. And again, you look at how we're born, and you've got a young child at home, and they're hypermobile, right? They can put their foot in their mouth, they can do whatever the heck they want, and at some point we lose that stability. Some of it's obviously just general growth and maturation, but that stability doesn't go away on its own.
Yeah.
And that mobility doesn't go away on its own. And as we start to add that stability back into the system, again, things are fine. And then these young kids, they earn their stability, right? We give them when they're young, a task that's fun, it's safe, and they earn their movement. And I kind of approach that, whether it's fitness or rehab. When I need someone to move better, there's a task. Ideally, it's nonverbal. It's a lot like cracking the whip with the Velociraptor. Yep. If they have a task in hand that's simple, it's amazing how much movement just kind of starts to happen again.
Right. Yeah. And I've noticed that, obviously you mentioned it with my 9-month-old. She's doing hip 90-90 sitting without a problem, going right out of it. All these are all exercises that I give my clients to try and to do if they can. But
sure.
As part of, like you said, the process of going through maturation and growing, we start to develop stiffness through the joints. We might start to develop bone asymmetries, right side versus left side. So there's a lot of factors that go into why people kind of lose mobility as they get older.
Sure. Sitting a lot, right? You and I, this is the first time I've sat down for more than 10 minutes today. If I wasn't standing, I was laying down. And now I'm sitting for the last half hour, and thank God I've got a beer to help loosen
I would say something. Sitting for me is like therapeutic because I'm standing all day. I'm walking around. I sit down. I'm like, oh, this feels so good. Most people are the opposite of that.
Sure.
When you see that all over social media, right? I mean, everyone's like, postures like this. We got to try to fix that. I know you're pretty good at the social media aspect. How do you use social media? I mean, I've seen your Instagram page and everything. You got some really high tech videos and
it's funny. It comes and goes. Obviously, we've got a lot of downtime, so I've been able to get involved with it a little bit more. It's something that I know is incredibly valuable from a marketing standpoint. It's a good way just to get your thought process out there, because I think for the majority of your amateur golfers out there, at least for me, the stuff I provide for them is pretty unique. You and I, we can go to a seminar and we feel like we're around a bunch of folks that are all like-minded, and then you go home and no one knows what the hell you're talking about. And so it is a great way, if you take the other trainers aside and PT folks aside, it's a great way to get the message out there to just the general public.
Right. Awesome. And we see a lot of silly stuff on social media. For sure.
Like we were talking about right now, more than ever, like I need to laugh. I need to enjoy what the heck's going on. There's too much craziness out there. So if I can make anybody laugh even for a second, even if it's at my own expense and they think I'm just a goofball, like God bless them, right? I made you laugh and hopefully you feel better for a few seconds.
That's funny. Well, hey man, I want to thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate that. Taking time out of your busy schedule right now.
Oh yeah.
Where can people reach you or find out more information about your company, yourself, social media, all that stuff?
So Omnikinetics on Facebook, Instagram. I hardly use Twitter. Instagram's kind of my go-to. I post something there and it just gets posted out to the rest of the social media.
Right. Awesome. Well, hey man, thanks again for doing this.
It was awesome. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you soon down in Florida.
Once you get your podcast going here, I'll be expecting a call.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Graham. Thanks so much, buddy.
Have a great one. Thanks a lot.